Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know about the new Microsoft Office scripts. Now, in case you haven't heard, Office scripts are Microsoft's proposed successor to VBA and they are currently available to preview. In this video, I will explain what Office scripts are and how they compare to VBA. And I will also show you how you can try them for yourself. Now, you don't actually need an E3 or Office 365 subscription to try them. There's actually an easier and better way to use Office scripts, and it works with any version of Excel from 2013 onwards. Towards the end of this video, I'll show you an amazing Office script example, and it does something that you won't have seen before. So what are Office scripts? Well, VBA hasn't changed since 2007, and Microsoft many years ago have decided that they're not going to do any further development with the VBA platform. So they decided to rewrite the API a few years ago. So the API is essentially the programming interface, and it's the part of Excel that VBA talks to. They originally used JavaScript as the language with this new API, but now they're using TypeScript. So TypeScript is a superset of the language JavaScript. Now, the project has had many names over the last few years, and Microsoft have finally settled on Office scripts. So you might be asking why the change. So let's look at one of the main reasons here. So at the moment, there are four main platforms, and VBA is only available on the desktop and on the Mac. Even on the two platforms that VBA is available, there's some differences in the code. For example, user forms are no longer available on the Mac, and Windows libraries like the dictionary are not available to use on the Mac either. So you need to write a bit of different code to get around this. Now, the big advantage of using TypeScript over VBA is that the same code will work on all four platforms, and I think you'll agree that this is a pretty good advantage. Now, it's doubtful that it will be used much on the mobile platform, but still the option is there if necessary. Now, another advantage is that the TypeScript has many language features that make VBA look quite old in comparison, and we'll be looking at an example of one of these features later in the video. So will VBA become obsolete when the full version of Office scripts is released? Well, the resounding answer is no. VBA will continue to be supported. Microsoft still supports an early version of macros back from the early 1990s, and that wasn't even used that much at the time. Now, we don't know how many lines of VBA code is out there, but there's many millions, 100 million, maybe even a billion, who we can only guess at what it is. But Microsoft aren't going to pull the plug on these. They're not going to make all these applications obsolete. Now, very few popular languages ever become obsolete. C was replaced by C++ in the 1990s, and it's still as popular as ever. COBOL, the punch card language, which was invented in 1959, is currently back in demand because there are so many applications that were built using COBOL and that are still in operation in many big companies. So going forward, will Office scripts replace VBA as the language of choice for Excel? Well, this is a very tough question, and we'll have to wait for the full release of Office scripts to know. Because over the years, there's been so many new technologies. Some have been very successful, some have completely failed, and some have been somewhere in between. So we never really know in advance. Now, one disadvantage I see is that there is a steeper learning curve for non-programmers who want to use Office scripts. And nowadays, most people who use VBA tend to be business analysts, financial analysts, or some other kind of advanced Excel user with a background in data. Very few of these tend to be programmers or have a programming or software engineering background. So now that we've discussed all about Office scripts, what it is, etc., let's have a look at how we can actually use it. If you have the Office 365 E3 or E5 license, then you can look at the Office scripts preview. So how you do this is as follows. We go to Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and then we go to Settings. Now we click on Settings, and then under Settings we have Org Settings. Now this used to be Settings up until recently. And when we click on that, we've got a list of items. We go down here and we find Office Script, and when we click on Office Script, we'll get this panel that comes up. And in the panel, what it tells us is that let users automate their tasks in Office on the web. So we check this on, and this may take 48 hours to take effect. Now once it's ready, when we go into Office script examples, so this is our file on Excel Online. So we go to Excel Online, and you can see that we've got Automate in our ribbon. So we click on Automate, and we get the option to record something. So this is like the macro recorder, the code editor, and then a list of scripts that I've recently created. So we click on the code editor and you'll see that it will load on the right hand side. So this shows the scripts, and we can actually create new scripts if we want. So the first thing that we want to kind of keep in mind is, so where are the actual scripts stored and where is the document stored? So if we look at our OneDrive, so you can see that on my OneDrive, Office script example, so that's the file we're in, is stored here. And then if I go to Documents and Office scripts, you can see that the previous Office scripts are stored here as OSTS files. So this is where these files are actually stored. So let's have a quick look at the editor so that we can see exactly what it does. So I'm going to go into a basic Excel. So this is one I've created already. And what this does is it gets the worksheet in the range. First of all, it loads the values, and then it prints orange to the console. So the console is basically very similar to the immediate window. And then the second one will print limes to the console. So we click on run to get it to run. You can see it says the script is running. And now one thing to keep in mind is that this is a bit slower than running a macro, but the reason for this is that I'm running this online, so it's obviously going to be slower. So if this was in the actual desktop, it's going to run faster. So you can see the output that we have here is oranges and limes, because we're writing out what was in position 10, which was oranges, and position 30, which was limes. So one thing to keep in mind here is that the code editor is very, very basic. So we can't really stretch it that much. We can't pop it out. We can't do a lot of stuff with it. So these are kind of the disadvantages, but then again, it's just a preview. Now, another thing is we can't debug through the code. We can't step through the code line by line. So for the moment, we'll have to use our console log, which is debug print, to find errors. Now, one thing that's really useful in this is that the IntelliSense. So for example, if I use something like my sheet, you can see that it brings it up without having, in VBA we have to use Control Space. This automatically brings it up, and you can see when we do the dot here, it gives us all the available items. Now I know it does this in VBA as well, but it's actually a bit more clever here. So if I do get range, and let's say I do, it doesn't matter, A1. Now when I put the full stop here, and I'm looking for current region, because I use current region in VBA and I don't know what the current region thing is here. If I'm looking for region, say, I don't know what it is, I type region, it actually brings up the ones with that word. So it's not just doing it by the first alphabetical order, it's searching within that word. So I can say, oh, get surrounding region. That sounds like something that I could use. And you can see underneath here, it actually explains what it is. Returns a range object that represents the surrounding region. So the IntelliSense here is very, very good. Now another thing that I like is that the actual error reporting seems to be a bit better. So for example, if I leave out these lines here, so say, let me just comment them out, and then I run this code. Let's see what it says. It gives us a very detailed error. The properties value is not available. And it says, before reading the properties value, call the load method on the containing object and call context synced on the associated request. So you can see here the two lines I left out, load and await context sync. It's actually told us why we have an error is because I'm missing these two exact lines. So this kind of error is actually very, very helpful for us. And if you've been using VBA macros for any length of time, you can see that this is a vast improvement over the error messages that we get there. So this is the code editor in Office Scripts. And I don't want to get too much into the code now because I'll be doing that in later videos. Just want to give you kind of a brief look at what it's like. Now, if you don't have the Office 365 E3 or E5 license, then there's an alternative way that you can use Office Scripts. So let's have a look at that now. So if you don't have the Office 365 E3 or E5 license, you can also try out Office Scripts. What you can do is go to Insert on your menu and then go to Get Add-ins. Now this could be called Store on some versions of Excel, but basically it should be there for 2013 onwards. So when we click on this, it opens the Microsoft stores or Office add-ins. And what we're looking for is this one here, Script Lab. So when you find that, you can just click add and it will add it to your Excel menu. Now once it's added, you'll see that it appears on your ribbon here. So you can see Script Lab. And if we click on Script Lab, it will open and you can see Code Run Functions. So we click on Code to open Script Lab. And once we open it up, you see that we've got some code there already. Now one thing to keep in mind with the files here is that if you want to store the files, you have to store them on GitHub, which is like a programming website. But what you can also do is you can just store these as text files. So you can do Ctrl A on this, just Ctrl A, and then you can store it in a notepad. So if you're just playing around at the moment, it's no problem to do this at all. So you just paste it here in Notepad and then just save it as a text file. Now they're also stored, your snippets are also stored, you can see here on the right hand side as we go down, but it says here they get erased if you clear your browser cache. Now I'm not sure how true this is on the desktop, but it's probably there for a reason. So that's just to keep in mind the things you need to know about your files. So I think the easiest way, if you're just starting off, is just to save them as text files. So one really useful thing about the code window is that we can move it around. So we can do this, we can stretch it, and we can even move it to a second screen if we have one. So this is very easy because we can run it on one screen and see what happens in Excel on the other screen. So let's run the code we had earlier just to see how it works here. So we can start again by just going to a sample. So let's take that TypeScript sample. We take it like this and just load it. And you'll see that there's some extra code here. There's like run. And then as we go down, we've got these extra things here. Now where our code will go is right here. So this is where we're going to put our code. So we can delete the code that's already there. And then we can go to the previous code that we have. And you can see this code. So what we do is we take the code here and we just copy this code. And then we go back to the other code. And then we can just paste our code in here. So when we run this code, it should run and give us the exact same result. So to run it, we go to the ribbon and we click on Run. And this opens up the Run window. Now it takes a while the first time to open it, but once it's open, it will run fine. So it's not actually running at the moment, it's just opening this window. So what we have here is a button, Highlight Selected Range. And that's just because we've got some HTML and that's how we run it. It gives us a button and we click on it. Now we can just change this. If you want to just change it to make it more clear, we can just change the button. Very easy to do. We just say run. And you can see that it appeared there. Now you don't have to do this, but it just makes, I think, things a bit clearer. So now that we have our run button, we can just click on this button and see what happens. So let's click run. And you can see the results here. Oranges and limes were printed to the results window. So this code works exactly as it worked in the online version. So in the preview version that we looked at, the very same code and it produces the very same result. But I think this editor is just a bit nicer to use. So now that we know what office scripts are, let's use them to perform a task in Excel. So this is our task. First I'm going to do it in VBA and then I'm going to do it using TypeScript so you can see some amazing features of TypeScript. So let's start by having a look at what we're trying to do. So it's quite simple really. We've got this fruit data on the left hand side and what I want to do is I want to filter this so that I just get the fruit that is limes. So all the limes data, and I want to copy it over here. So let me just copy it over here. But what I want to do as well when I'm filtering, I want to multiply the second column by 2. So the final result should look like this. And that's what I'm going to do in VBA and then I'm going to do it in TypeScript. So let's start with the VBA code. So as normal, the first thing we want to do is we want to get the range. So we get the range and we do it like this. We say dim fruit range as range and then set fruit equal to sheet1 dot range A1 and the current region. So the current region gives us back all the adjacent data. And now we're going to create a collection because we need a collection to store our data. And then what we want to do is read through the range. So we read through the range, I as long, and we say for I equals 2 to the fruit range rows that count. So we're starting at 2 because we're not including the header. So then we say if, and we want to say if the range, so if fruit range dot cells in the current row 1 dot value, if it equals limes, then we want to start our filtering. What we want to do first of all is we want to get the row as an array, and then we want to multiply the values as an array. So we declare our array as a variant, and then we store the current row in here. So we say fruit range dot rows I dot value, and that's in array. And then we say array. So the current row is 1 because this is just for this row, and we want the second item. And what we want to do with the second item is we want to multiply it by 2. So in other words, we filtered the row, we said if it's line, then we want to copy that row into an array, and then we want to multiply the second value of that array by 2. And then finally, we're going to add this to our collection so we can write it out at the end. So let's do a debug compile. Everything seems good so far. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write it out back to our sheet. So to write it to the sheet, we say dim item as variant, and we say for each item in collection. And we'll put our next down here. Now what we also want is we also want the row that we're going to write it out. So we say row as long, and row is going to start at row 1. And then we say sheet 1 dot range, and it's column E ampersand the current row. That's what we want to write out. And we want to resize it so it's the same size as the row we're writing out. So obviously the row is 1 because it's a row, so we don't have multiple rows. And then the number of columns is basically what's in our array, so it's the second dimension. So basically the second dimension is columns. We do resizing that, and then we set the value, and that equals the item. And remember, the item is just the row that we added to the collection. Now every time we add a row, we need to update our row, so the next time it'll write to the row below. So we do row equals row plus 1. Now always when we finish, we do a debug compile, and then let's run the code and see what happens. So let's go to our spreadsheet, and let's just get rid of these just to make our code clear. And let's press F5 and run the code. And you can see that we got the result that we were expecting. So the code is a bit long-winded, so let's try and write the same code in TypeScript and see if we can do it any better. So let's see how we can do the exact same task, but this time using TypeScript. So the first thing that we want to do is get the worksheet, and we do it like this. We'll have a variable called selected sheet, and we use let like dim, except we can also assign while we do it. I'm going to say equal context workbook, which is the current workbook, worksheets, which is the collection of worksheets. So quite similar to VBA, you can see at the moment. And then what we want to do is get item, and the item is the worksheet. So we say sheet 1. So now we've got a worksheet. We want to get our range. So we say let fruit range, and we'll assign that to the selected sheet, and we want to get the range on that sheet, and the range we want to get is A1. Now we want to use current region now, just like we use it in VBA, and current region is surrounding region. So we can type SURR, and you see that it brings it up, and we just hit tab key and we've got surrounding region. And all the lines you can see in this language end with a semicolon. So we've got the range. And now what we do, which is different in TypeScript, is that we have to load the values. So we use fruit and we do load. And what we're loading is the values, as I said. And then we need to use this bit of code. And this is because TypeScript is an online language and we have to sync our data using this command. So now these are the 2 extra lines that we don't have to do in VBA. So far, VBA seems to have the slight lead, but I think you'll see that TypeScript is very powerful when we write the next line. So we create another variable result, and we want result to equal So we want to filter the data. And this is how we filter the data. We get our range and we say the values of that range we want to filter. And we use function and we use value and index. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have our function in here. Now we can have it on one line, but I'm just putting it on over multiple lines just to make it look a bit clearer. And within here, what we do is we say return, and we want to return value. So that's the value 0 is the first column of the array. And we want to say where it is equal to. So double equals in TypeScript is like a comparison. So it's one confusing thing in VBA. We have equals for a sign and for a comparison. But in many other languages, we have two equals. And that means comparing. Where that equals lines, and we put a semicolon here. So this will filter our data and put the result in the result array. And now we just want to write out our result array. So we do selected sheet, get the range, and we do E1. And then we want to do a resize. Now again, if you didn't know what resize was, you could just type resize. And it says get absolute resized range. And that means that it's going from 1, so the absolute value. And we want to get result length. And we want to get the column. So the column, let me just move this across a little bit. So the column is result, and it's in the first dimension, or in the second dimension, it's the length of that. So it's saying take a current row, which is result 0, and what's the length of that row, which is the number of columns. So we're resizing that, and we basically just say values, and that's assigned to result. So very similar to VBA code. So let's run this code and see what happens. So we click on run, and you can see that it filtered the data with just that one line of code to filter. So we didn't need a for loop. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to multiply these values by 2. So 600 and 500 we want to multiply by 2. So how we do it is very similar to the last one. We're going to have another variable called let new result. So let's put this back here. And we do new result. And new result will equal to result filter. So we're filtering the array that we've already filtered. And we do the same thing again, but this time our filter is slightly different. Our filter function details. So it's 1, which is the second column. So the second column is assigned to itself multiplied by 2. Now, as I said, assigned is 1 equals. This is just a comparison. And let's run this code then. Now, first, before we run this code, actually, we need to do one small thing, and that's to put new result here, because it's new result that we want to write out. So let's run this code then and see what we get. And you can see that the result is as expected. We got 1200 and 1000. So you can see that the TypeScript is incredibly powerful. In just a few lines of code, we're able to update all the values, and we don't need a for loop to do so. So let's compare that to VBA. And you can see that the TypeScript code is much neater to write. So we're able to do the filter very, very neat indeed. We didn't have to worry about declaring collections or anything like that. So I think you can see that there's a lot of potential from using TypeScript. So now in this video, I covered the differences between VBA and OfficeScript. I showed you what OfficeScript was, how you can use it, and even if you don't have the E3 or E5 subscription, you can still use it by using the Script Lab, which I think has a very nice editor and very nice the way you can move the windows around. And then we looked at the code and compared how to do a certain task using VBA versus using TypeScript. So if you could let me know in the comments what you think about TypeScript. Did you think some of it maybe is a bit complex, or do you think it's powerful? Just let me know what you think. And if you like this video, please click on the like button. And if you'd like to get notified of my upcoming videos, then please click on the subscribe button below. If you want to get the source code for this video, then go to the description below and click on the link. Now, if you're planning to build Excel VBA applications, then it's worth checking out my course, the Excel VBA Handbook. Now, this course teaches you how to build Excel VBA applications from scratch. It goes through 10 different applications and it teaches you step by step, teaching you all the core concepts that you need to build an applications in Excel VBA. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope to see you on the next one.